Yeah, hi, I'm Roy, and I am a conspiracy theorist.
Al-Qaeda is the CIA. Al-Qaeda is the CIA. Al-Qaeda is the CIA. 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 Okay. Al-Qaeda is the CIA. Al-Qaeda is the CIA. Al-Qaeda is the CIA. The CIA. The CIA.
Hello and welcome to The World According to Roy. My name is Roy Hunter, and tonight we're going to have a look at conspiracies. Are they real? Are they ongoing? Before we do that, let's have a quick look at the dictionary definition of conspiracy so we know what we're talking about. This is from the Free Dictionary online. Conspiracy. An agreement to perform together an illegal, wrongful or subversive act. An agreement between two or more persons to commit a crime or accomplish a legal purpose through illegal action. Joining or acting together as if by sinister design. So we can see that those things are going on all the time in the world we live in, which is rife with criminality and corruption. But let's analyse a few of the conspiracies that we do see coming in our everyday lives. And the best one to look at there is really the financial system. We can see through the mainstream media, we can see that the gold price has been manipulated, the foreign exchange markets are manipulated, the oil markets manipulated, the LIBOR scandal, which is the interbank lending rates decide which interest rates they're going to charge each other, that's been manipulated. And even the ratings agencies. So these are the agencies that tell businessmen, politicians, how strong a certain company is. And we saw that right up until the crash of Lehman's and AIG, that the Moody's and Standard and Poor's were actually rating those companies with AA ratings right up until the minute they fell. We can see the HSBC scandal. What haven't they been involved in? They've been caught laundering drug money, and we can see very recently the way they've encouraged people and facilitated people to avoid their taxes. So we can see these going on. They're going on all the time, and they are conspiracies. The whole top level of management must know what's going on. A lot of the traders must know what's going on. But perhaps you think that these are just criminal acts and not necessarily conspiracies. Well, let's widen it out a little bit. Because it's not only the management of those companies, but there's also the financial regulators who are supposed to be working for you and me, supposed to be working for our government. They don't seem to be doing a very good job, and they must have known that this couldn't have happened without them knowing. The politicians, they must have known. The police, who are supposed to be policing this, the media are very slow to pick up on these. We can see with the Daily Telegraph and Peter Oborne how the Daily Telegraph didn't report on the HSBC scandal hardly at all because they were a big provider of their advertising income. So we can see. So why don't the politicians and the police? Why don't they follow up? Why don't they prosecute these people? And I think one of the ways we can see this is actually through the paedophile scandals, because we can see that there's a lot of paedophilia in and around the political establishment, and I don't see this as an accident really. We can see, particularly through the Kincora boys' home in Northern Ireland, we can see that MI5 were complicit in that, and they were more than complicit, they were actually running the show. And they were actively encouraging politicians to come in, fiddle with kids. It will have all been on camera. And of course, once you've got those politicians on camera fiddling with kids, you own that politician. They'll do whatever you want them to do. And I'm not really quite sure how it works, but behind MI5 aren't working for you and me. MI5 are working for the shadow government. And so what they're doing is corrupting and making complicit the politicians in our system, the politicians that should be working for us. They're making them complicit, and therefore they're working for the shadow government. They're not working for us at all. And we can see here Tim Fortescue, who was a whip in the Edward Heath government between 1970 and 1973. And let's just have a little listen to what he says.
Anyone with any sense who was in trouble would come to the whips and tell them the truth and say, no, I'm in a jam, Can you help? It might be debt. It might be scandal involving small boys, or any kind of scandal which a member seemed likely to be mixed up in. They'd come and ask if we could help. And if we could, we did. And we would do everything we can, because we would store up brownie points. That sounds a pretty nasty reason, but it's one of the reasons. Is if we can get a chap out of trouble, then he'll do as we ask forevermore.
And there's other way of capturing politicians as well, through financial scandals. It's not by any means all paedophilia, but in my opinion, what this means is that probably most of the people in our government who can make decisions are actually compromised. I'm not saying they all go in compromised, but once they're compromised, those compromised individuals will then be promoted into positions of power, because that's what they want. They want the people with the power to be beholden to them, the shadow government, rather than to us. The police, we can see that the police, through a method of promotion, if they buck the system too hard, they don't get their pensions. And we also see now that the people at the top echelons of the police are no longer rank and file police. It used to be that a guy would come up through the police force, he'd learn as he went along, and once he got good enough, he would go into the top echelons of the police management. And now we see those political appointees there now, so they haven't even been through the police system. We can see through the media, looking particularly at America, but it's very, very similar here. It's all one system. Don't go thinking that we're separate from America. We're not. We might be lagging behind them a little bit, but we're basically there. It's all basically neoliberal capitalism. And we can see, particularly in America, that there's 6 corporations that own all the media. Okay, and that means all the media. That means Hollywood. That means all the news shows that you see. Of course, it doesn't relate to alternative media, thank God, but also all your print media, all your local papers, all your magazines, anything that can shape public opinion is owned. 90% of it is owned by 6 corporations. So we can see how the stuff doesn't get talked about. There's no media there. There's no very, very few honest journalists who will chase this thing. And even if there are honest journalists, then further up the chain, the editors, it's not the editors making decisions anymore. It's people from the corporations that actually say what goes to air. And in this country we have Rupert Murdoch. In this country he's got Sky TV, the Times, the Financial Times, and the Sun. So there's a broad spectrum there of public opinion that he can influence. And I would argue that Rupert Murdoch his power and his money doesn't actually come through selling newspapers. What Rupert Murdoch has is a little intelligence agency there, and we saw particularly with the phones hacking scandals, there's still very few people brought to bear with any criminal prosecutions there, and certainly the management seem to have got away with it. But what he's using those journalists for is not to collect news. He's using those journalists to collect dirt. If a News of the World journalist got a good scoop on a politician, it wouldn't be immediately published. It would be held in the back until it could be made use of, and all the time that you can use that information to threaten those politicians, to get them to do what you want. So let's have a look at the corporations, really. Because at the top of these corporations, the news corporations, the individuals that are in the top management of these corporations are also on the boards of other corporations. And they'll be on the boards of mining companies, they'll be on arms manufacturers. So it all ties in at the top there. And in a way, the corporations are taking over. Now the corporations are so big and have so much influence that really they're stronger than the nation state. So we've got no protection anymore, really. We've got wolves in charge. There's a nice old saying that a nation of sheep will beget themselves a government of wolves, and that's exactly where we are right at this minute. But there were 3 systems theorists in the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. and they are using a computer analysis and a database, and this database listed 37 million companies, and they broke down, there were 43,000, just over 43,000 transnational companies, and they put all the information of these transnational companies into a big computer, crunched the numbers, and they found that there's a core out of these 43,000, there's a core group of 147 corporations that have so much control over all the other corporations as well, and they found that together they control 40% of the wealth, so that's an enormous amount of power there. And we see the corporate lobbying, they spend millions, billions actually persuading our politicians to do what they want. And we see a lot of these corporations, a lot of these companies are paying very, very, very little tax. And there's a very good reason for that, because what they've persuaded us to do is make our government smaller. We're all smaller government, smaller government. But what that means is that our government hasn't got the expertise to write the tax laws. So what we do is we bring in, people from the corporations. They're lending us their accountants, their tax officials, to actually write the legislation for us, because we can't afford to do it anymore. We don't have that expertise in the HMRC. And what that means for us really is the demise of the nation state, or the demise of the power of the nation state. And I know a lot of people in politics who look on that as a good thing. But what that is really is our representatives. Our government should be our representatives. And okay, our governments are completely corrupt, but that doesn't, getting rid of them doesn't actually help. What we need to do is reform them, because they are our representatives. They're our protection against the predatory corporations. And we can see now, if there's any way you want to get involved politically, really, one of the most useful things you can do at the minute is fight the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is otherwise known as the TTIP. And what this is it's being touted as a trade agreement, but what it is really is it's an agreement now, and it's being negotiated in secret. We don't know what's in there. We've got various leaks which give us insights, and so we have to divine what's in there through the little leaks that we do have. But what that's going to do is that's actually going to give the corporations an enormous more amount of power over the nation state, over our governments, over our regulators, over our ability to prosecute. And what it's going to do, it's going to allow these corporations to actually write our laws. Again, we haven't got the expertise in our government because it's small government. So if we want laws writing, we borrow all these people from the corporations. And one of the things that the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership is going to do is it's going to allow corporations to sue our governments if our governments make any laws that they don't like, or will harm their profits, and they'll be able to sue our governments for lost profits. So, as if the corporations haven't got enough power already, once the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership is signed into law, then I'm afraid they're going to have an awful lot more power.